Blue Jays fans rejoice. The Toronto Blue Jays have now played spoiler for the Red Sox playoff chances.
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jays. Thank you for making Locked On Blue Jays your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube by Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This episode is brought to you by Booking.com. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your baseball rivals. Book today on Booking.com, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. Get the Booking.com app today. As always, I'm Braden Wasco. He's Carter First. You can find us on Twitter, Braden5 Wasco, Carter First too as well, on Instagram and TikTok at Locked On Blue Jays. If you're new here on YouTube, drop a subscription. Really helps us out, keeps us at the top of your guys' page. If you're listening anywhere else, on any of the other platforms, come over to YouTube, drop a subscription anyway. In case we go live, you can hit that notification bell as well. In case we go live, in case there's a short, anything like that, so you guys stay up to date on all your Blue Jays knowledge. Some stuff to get into today. Not the heaviest day of Toronto Blue Jays information, but we have the game recap. Sort of going to go through some of the big components here. Shout out one guy that we'll get into. We're going to talk a little bit about Kevin Gausman, how his final start of the season went. We're going to get into the Jays bullpen. There were some roster moves made. Are they looking for a guy that can possibly slide in next year? Also, a ton of other Blue Jays information. If you guys didn't know already, we are going to be live Sunday, the final game of the Blue Jays season. From first pitch, we're going to be live. We're going to have a couple guests that'll join us. We'll talk. We'll go over your guys' questions, comments, and some of the other things that some of the guys have brought to the table. So, Carter, I guess let's start on the game. I mean, the Blue Jays playing a little bit of spoiler action for the Red Sox.
Yeah, the main thing coming out of today is the Toronto Blue Jays put to bed the Red Sox season. There wasn't a very high chance they were going to make the playoffs anyway, considering what was going down in the AL. But it is nice when you do get to put the stamp on the end of your rival season. It would have been nice if we had the Yankees at this point. It would have been nice if we could have been saying the Yankees are demoted to a wild card spot rather than a AL East division win. But hey, we'll take our small wins when we can get them. But I mean, speaking of the Yankees, Jason Dominguez might be one of the worst outfielders I've ever seen. This guy just can't catch a fly ball. It's like me out there in the outfield, just completely lost. Might as well just be picking dandelions. So that's good. That's going to be what I'm looking forward to. Is maybe an NL winner this year, and then just hopefully the Yankees get bounced in the first round. That's what I live for now as a Toronto Blue Jays fan. But we'll stick with the Toronto Blue Jays stuff for today. The man of the day, the man of the hour, Jonatan Clase, first home run of his MLB career. Launches a off-speed pitch off the inside part of the plate into the right field stands. You'll have to see that. Clase, a guy that they did get at the trade deadline, so a prospect that is playing for the Toronto Blue Jays with all these injuries that we've had at the end of the season. Nice to see what he can do for the Blue Jays. A guy that's very quick, so you're not really looking for the home run power from him. If he can start hitting home runs, that would be absolutely electric. But a guy that's probably just going to smack the ball around the ballpark. A prototypical leadoff hitter, you could say. Got that speed. That usually does hit for average. So if you can start seeing good things from Clase, definitely going to be something to get fired up for if you're a Toronto Blue Jays fan. Guy goes 3 for 3 on the day with 2 RBIs with that home run. Does have a walk, 6 total bases. Just a great day from our young prospect.
And that's something you'd love to see, right? This is the time of the season when bringing up these guys sort of show you what you have in the future. And I think that's the biggest component for this Toronto Blue Jays team right now is seeing, okay, in 2, 3, 4, 5 years, who do they have that can be a viable option? You know, when Vladdy, is still here, hopefully Bichette's still here, but they're not, the young guns anymore. Who's going to be the next wave of Toronto Blue Jays? And Jonatan Clase has looked really good, Carter. To see him get his first home run, is just great for a young guy like that to get his first home run. I mean, that's a milestone. They'll probably be celebrating it a little bit in the clubhouse afterwards. It's great to see. And we've seen a lot of those this season because we've had to bring up a lot of young guys because we're pretty much, you can pretty much call the Toronto Blue Jays the Buffalo Bisons at this point. So, but it's getting to that point in the year, right? We knew this was coming. These games really don't mean anything. As much as I, am sitting there watching the game and, still praying for wins. at the end of the day, it doesn't mean much. But, to a lot of these players and young guys who are getting their first shot in the MLB, it means a lot to them.
Yeah, it doesn't mean anything to the 2024 Toronto Blue Jays and their future, but it definitely does mean some things to player development, especially for these young players on these rosters. When you go over the last few seasons, really the only, like, the main prospects or the main guys that you would know throughout the Toronto Blue Jays system is that you have your Kevin Biggio's, you have your Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s, your Bichette's, maybe the odd one thrown in here as well, your Nate Pearson's at that time. But now, when you're looking at this current Toronto Blue Jays team and you look at the average fan, they probably know a whole lot more prospects than they've ever known before. And that's just where we're at with the Toronto Blue Jays season. Like, just going over a small list, I'll just kind of round a few off the top of my head. Will Wagner, Joey Lopervito, you got Jonatan Clase, you got Jake Bloss, you got all these players that are a lot of them making an impact on your major league team. Obviously not Jake Bloss, but there's so many different prospects that have come into the Toronto Blue Jays system from the trade deadline, even just throughout the system that we have seen play for the MLB team. So in that sense, it has been fun to kind of see what these guys can do for the future. It has given us a little bit to get excited about. But at the end of the day, you have a million prospects. Not every single prospect is going to be on the Toronto Blue Jays. So some of these prospect battles in the later stretches of the season are literally battling for a possible starting spot on the 2025 Toronto Blue Jays. Maybe a spring training spot, maybe that first call-up spot if there are injuries, which just happen every single year for a baseball team. So for those players, this is definitely a big part of their year. So you want to see good things. Jonatan Clase, it's nice that you have the one game. Haven't really seen anything crazy from him up to this point. So it's nice that he does have his standout game here. But with all these prospects, you just want to see them play good baseball and just show flashes. And Clase definitely did this in this game. Does this mean he's going to be an all-star for the Toronto Blue Jays next season? Absolutely not. It'd be nice if he can make the team. It's not even given if that he's on the major league roster for this season. So again, you gotta just take that step back when you're seeing these performances. Don't get too overhyped and just see how he can develop for this offseason and just for the future.
Yeah, I don't even think it's a question. If you were to ask me right now, I would say absolutely not that he's going to be on the Blue Jays roster next season. But, a lot can happen. We're going to have to see what happens in the offseason and what this Toronto Blue Jays management team can do and who they can bring in, because there is a likelihood that we're stuck with these players. And this is how the season will go. That's what we saw last year. Yes, they might add in a couple pieces, but is it going to matter? They're going to need some big name guys if roster spots want to move. So obviously we'll talk more about that as this offseason continues here. We still got 3 games left the Toronto Blue Jays season. Another guy we got to get into, Mr. 17, Alejandro Kirk, 17-game hitting streak. Huge for him. He has had a monster back half of the season. Absolutely loved what I'm seeing from Alejandro Kirk, giving me a little bit of a glimpse of hope into 2025.
Yeah, from that catcher position. I know for me, I've said this on the podcast before, I've never really been high on Alejandro Kirk, but these last 17 games have been fun. I'll be the first one to say it. I love when the Toronto Blue Jays play good baseball. Like, I'm going to be the first one to admit when I'm wrong. If the Blue Jays are successful, I'll take that on the chin every single day of the week. So a lot of his last 15 games, guys hitting .302 with a .434 slugging, which isn't popping off the charts necessarily, but for Alejandro Kirk, that's a pretty good slugging. He's looked very good at the plate. Again, looking like he's a lot more comfortable there playing, having more playing time at that position. Starting to barrel up balls again, starting to do what Alejandro Kirk did in his earlier tenure with the Toronto Blue Jays. Things that we got excited for this catcher's future. Hasn't really kept the consistency up. So again, you want Alejandro Kirk. We love these 17-game hitting streaks, but you want sort of this median. You don't necessarily get that this year, but this is something to build off of. Alejandro Kirk's confidence should be at an all-time high going into 2025. That's exactly what we're looking for. Just a couple more shout-outs from the game. I'll let you go into Alejandro Kirk just quickly after this. Ernie Clement, 2-hit day. Just love to see that from my guy. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., 3 hits away from 200. And then we'll get into Kevin Gausman, but I'll let you just go over Alejandro Kirk quickly first.
Yeah, and Alejandro Kirk, I mean, again, not so much that I want to get into him because I think everybody sees and understands, and we've talked about him a ton over the last few episodes and just what he's been able to do offensively and defensively on the field for the Blue Jays this 2024, back half of 2024. But the big thing you talked about there is confidence and carrying over confidence. That's been the one thing me and you have discussed nonstop over the past week and a half, 2 weeks of Toronto Blue Jays baseball here, is that you need these guys that are going to be everyday players to bring that confidence into 2025, right? And we'll get into Kevin Gausman and how he looked probably just coming up in the second segment here, Carter, just before we get into sort of the bullpen rigmarole that's been going on. But the confidence piece, it's huge. And we talked about guys like Bowden Francis, who's put a staple in the fact that he's going to be a part of this Toronto Blue Jays squad moving into 2025. Alejandro Kirk is now I don't think just reinvigorated the management's liking in him and his coaches liking in him and his teammates liking him, but the fans. I think the fans are starting to get on the back of this guy and say, okay, maybe he is our everyday catcher. Maybe I have faith that he can be a solid everyday catcher for this Toronto Blue Jays team here. And that's a huge part, right? You don't want the media or the fans flipping on you. You want everybody to have your back. And the best way you can do that is by playing good baseball. And that's what Alejandro Kirk has been able to do. So shout out to him and some of the other guys that have been really, really good since the All-Star break, Carter.
Alejandro Kirk is one of those positions that, yeah, you're probably going to get a backup catcher. But with looking at this team, you have so many other things to worry about that. And you've seen with Rogers' history of spending, this catcher position is going to get a very little bolster, if any, this offseason. So seeing Alejandro Kirk just have some sort of consistency, playing at the level of, I'd say above average, starting MLB catcher in this league, that's something that we got to be positive about. Like, you look at the bullpen, that's going to be the main thing. You got to address these issues. Alejandro Kirk, he's a young guy, like I said on the last podcast. People forget that this guy is 25 years old. So it's been nice to see Alejandro Kirk kind of figure this stuff out. And again, if he can kind of lift balls in the outfield, this guy can start flying out more than he's grounding out. That's going to help this team so drastically in the long run.
Yeah, Carter, and you talked about sort of the disparity that is the catcher position in the MLB right now. There's not a ton of great catchers, so when you got a guy that can give you success offensively and can help you defensively, that's tough to pass up right now, and I think gets overlooked, especially with the way Alejandro Kirk's been playing. Again, I don't want to overhype it because he is a little bit inconsistent. You're never really sure what you're going to get with Alejandro Kirk, but over this back half of this season, he's looked fantastic, and my confidence in Alejandro Kirk has only grown. In saying that, Carter, we still got a bunch more to get into on this game before we jump into sort of, yeah, like I said, the turntable, whatever you want to call it, of the Toronto Blue Jays bullpen. So we'll get into all that, and of course, we got a ton more Jays news to go over, and then we'll send you off for the off season or the off day, not quite the off season. We'll be right back after this quick break.
Today's episode is sponsored by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. They are the easiest and most exciting way to play fantasy sports because it's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you can pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. PrizePicks is very simple to play. I can make my picks and submit my entries in as little as 60 seconds. And PrizePicks has so many different categories that you can make your picks on, whether it's total bases, whether it's strikeouts, whether it's runs in the baseball game, whether it's home runs, NFL, NHL. There's obviously these other leagues going on as well. There's goals, assists, NFL. There's yards, touchdowns, tackles, you name it. Pretty much anything you can think of will be available to pick on PrizePicks. So I encourage you, if you know which players are going to perform on specific nights, put some money on these guys, make some money off PrizePicks, and then you can brag to your friends like I always brag to Braden when I win my bets as well. So you can download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit matchup to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit matchup to $100. PrizePicks, run your game.
Sorry, Carter, almost kicked you out there. So lots to get into here. I wanted to go over Kevin Gausman just before we sort of got into the bullpen component of this game, Carter. I mean, again, just a finish by Kevin Gausman. I mean, 6 innings pitched, 4 hits, 1 earned run, only 3 Ks and 3 walks. Not his, I would say, he didn't have completely all of his stuff today. The strikeouts, weren't quite there how you want him to be for Kevin Gausman, but he got the job done, went 6 innings, only gave up a run, and gave the Blue Jays a chance to win. And the good part is the bullpen didn't give up, a ridiculous amount of runs as usual. So the Toronto Blue Jays were able to sort of wipe this one away and grab the win and eliminate the Red Sox. So great day for Kevin Gausman. I enjoyed what I saw, and I think it was a good cap off to his 2024, Carter.
I think so too. A lot of people are going to look back at the season and say it's kind of a lost season for Kevin Gausman. But when you look at the overall standings, again, we'll go into this way more in the offseason, but he's throwing 180 innings. That's pretty good for a starting pitcher in the MLB, like a 3.8 ERA, 160 strikeouts. These numbers aren't underlyingly bad. It's just we know how Kevin Gausman is. We know how he pitched in 2023. This called for regression. Kevin Gausman had led the league in strikeouts, had an unbelievable strikeout rate. You could see a little bit of regression there, maybe not to this standpoint, but Kevin Gausman, prime bounce back candidate for 2025. Start the narrative right now. But that's pretty much all I got to say about Kevin Gausman. This guy is just, well, it's one of those things as we talk about Chris Bassitt, Jose Berrios, Kevin Gausman. I'm not worried about Kevin Gausman for 2025. Let's just keep this guy healthy. That's my main concern. Didn't necessarily start his season healthy. That probably led to a lot of these instabilities throughout the season. Let's just keep Kevin Gausman healthy for the 2024 offseason and the 2025 season. So we got some other pitchers to talk about. Do you want to end off anything with Kevin Gausman?
No, I just think that you just sort of hit the nail on the head with that. You didn't want him to get hurt. It was a fine season, and like we always talk about, the starting pitching is not a problem on this team, and it won't be for us. I mean, there's so many other bigger issues to worry about than how Kevin Gausman's year went, because he's a guy that's stable, and we know what we're going to get 90% of the time with him, and that's what he gave us this season. Yes, he wasn't lights out. He wasn't the best I've ever seen Kevin Gausman this season, but he also wasn't bad. And I think that a lot of people, fans, Toronto media have to remember that this was not a bad season by Kevin Gausman. So to end off on that, I'll send it back to you for some of the roster moves. What's going on with this craziness in the bullpen?
We've talked about the bullpen for a very long time. You talked about how the bullpen didn't give up a million runs, and I'm pretty sure that's because the Toronto Blue Jays put out their best 3 bullpen arms on the season. Brendan Little, Erik Swanson, and Chad Green. You look at everyone else on this roster, I don't know if they're necessarily getting it done, or at least I'm not as confident at them getting it done, other than maybe Ryan Burr you could throw in there. But let's get to some of the other bullpen arms. So what we've been seeing recently with the Toronto Blue Jays is they have been optioning a lot of their bullpen arms down to the AAA, and they've been taking a lot of shots on just some of these random players. You look at Dylan Tate has come to the Toronto Blue Jays. They made a signing. I don't know how to pronounce this guy's name. I'm going to try my best. Brett Zeus, maybe something like that. It's Geus. Pitched for the Mariners earlier on this season. Never really a higher leverage guy, but he's 26 years old. Dylan Tate was a guy that used to be a first-round pick. Easton Lucas is another guy the Toronto Blue Jays picked up. And if you remember from last season, Genesis Cabrera, who has established himself as a very good bullpen arm on this team. And that's actually who I'd throw in as my third reliever. I completely forgot about Genesis Cabrera. But these guys can be effective. You've seen them be effective. You look at Tyler Saucedo on the Seattle Mariners. He used to be a Toronto Blue Jay, was not very good with the Toronto Blue Jays, has established himself with that team. So you look at these bullpen arms, you look at a lot of these players, bullpen arms throughout the seasons. We've looking at this season. You look at the Toronto Blue Jays, they had a top 3 bullpen last season, had one of the worst bullpens in the league this season. So it's one of those things that it's kind of a revolving door with these bullpens. And you can find a lot of the time there's diamonds in the rough with a lot of these bullpen arms. So the fact that the Toronto Blue Jays are taking chances on some of these MLB-ready talents, some of these guys that have had success previously, maybe Pete Walker can do something with them, activate them. You know, Tommy Nance can be a serviceable player for your team. You know, Zach Pop probably isn't that good. So you take a chance on some of these other players. You see what they can do for your team. At the end of the day, you just DFA them. It's not going to hurt your team. You might as well. It's like buying a lottery ticket in a sense. Probably not a high success rate, but it's not going to hurt your team in the long run.
Yeah, if you're me, Carter, buying lottery tickets have been working out lately. No, yeah, you're 100% right. And it is a revolving door around the entire league. And you brought up that, I think to me earlier, Rogers doesn't spend a whole lot of money. And I talked about this earlier in the season. The Blue Jays have never spent over, or haven't spent over $11 million in the bullpen. And I, to be honest with you, I don't see that changing moving into next season. And I don't necessarily know if I want that to change. I don't know if I want them to go drop a bag on some reliever that may or may not do well. That's just what bullpens are. I mean, it's a lot of just finding out what works and hoping something sticks and adjusting. What I think the Blue Jays have to get better at is understanding when something isn't working and when something is quicker. Because sometimes they try to give guys too long of a leash, and then it comes back and it bites them for games and games and games. You have to know when to cut the ties. And that's a big thing with this Blue Jays management team, is knowing when to cut the ties. So we'll see what happens in 2024. That's going to be or 2025. That's going to be a huge question this offseason, is who do they bring back? Who's the staple pieces for this bullpen? I mean, we're going to get into all of that in the offseason. We're going to do a huge probably bullpen day. We're probably going to go player by player a little bit and decide, who we want to stay, who we just never want to see in a Blue Jays uniform again, and who's sort of in the mushy middle. And I think that when you look at this bullpen, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of mushy middle right now. Not necessarily horrendous, but not necessarily a piece that you want to see back next season. And I think that this Blue Jays management team needs to really dial in on who is worth the price of admission here. Who are people who can get the job done in this bullpen? And that's going to be the big question. And I think we already know who 3-4 of these guys are, 5 of these guys, but the surrounding pieces and who's going to be the big ad, that's going to be the big questions of the offseason, Carter.
When you look at the Toronto Blue Jays and spending in relievers, the last time they really paid a reliever was Kirby Yates, and that was in 2021, and he didn't pitch for the Toronto Blue Jays. He got injured, so it didn't have any effect on the bullpen. So with these guys, the Toronto Blue Jays, like you said, have never paid, under the Mark Shapiro and Ross Alcantara, have never paid a bullpen arm over $11 million, and they have never signed a bullpen arm for more than 2 years. So when you look at this bullpen free agency, there are some arms you can get. David Robertson's a guy that could, like, if you can get him on a good deal. Again, you don't want to be paying this guy a ton, but he does have an option with the Texas Rangers at $7 million. So saying that, he'd probably go back to the Texas Rangers unless he is getting more money, especially with the Toronto Blue Jays team that I wouldn't say has as much upside right now, at least, as the Texas Rangers have. So there are some other guys that you can go through and try to pay for a high leverage arm. I think the Toronto Blue Jays definitely need at least one more. But again, one guy that we don't have on this list right now is Jordan Romano. You get him back for next season. I still think they need one more guy, but whether they get that from a diamond in the rough, whether they pay for that, they're going to need some talent here. They're going to need somebody. And a lot of the time, like you said, you pay for these bullpen arms and they don't even produce for you anyway. So I'm kind of torn on what I want the Toronto Blue Jays to do this offseason. Again, once we get into the offseason, I'll probably do a whole lot more looking into who is free agents, who's available, who would fit this Toronto Blue Jays mold, things like that. Right now, we're still kind of in season mode. Even though, we got 3 games left, this has been one of the episodes that there hasn't been necessarily a ton to talk about, being just where we are in the Toronto Blue Jays season. But with the offseason, we have so much planned out. You said we're probably going to go player by player. We do a podcast every day. We're definitely going to go player by player. We're going to be coming at you with Toronto Blue Jays content throughout this entire offseason, so we appreciate you guys sticking around. But this bullpen is probably the biggest piece that the Toronto Blue Jays need to address. Sure, they need a power bat. That is definitely a must-need as well. But it doesn't matter unless you're just going to score 15 runs a game and you have a bullpen that's going to go out there and just get absolutely lit up. Doesn't really matter how good your offense is going to be for the majority of the time. That's pretty much all I got for relievers. You just got to find a diamond in the rough. It's the Toronto Blue Jays history, the Toronto Blue Jays path that has led to this point. They haven't spent on relievers. You see what they're doing right now in front of your eyes. Probably going to see a lot more of that even in next season. Maybe they don't address free agency as much as they should. I can see the Blue Jays at least leaving one spot open to kind of just fool around with next season, just to experiment on some of these players and maybe find one of those guys that can be a high leverage reliever for this team in 2025.
Yeah, Carter, and like you said, we're going to dive so much deeper into this, who's available, who's not, where guys going to end up. But, there's a lot of time left, a lot of time here for the Blue Jays to make a decision. And like we said, we'll talk about this with you guys a little bit too. If this is something you guys want brought up, we are going to be live on Sunday, first pitch of the final game of the Toronto Blue Jays season, game 162. A couple special guests popping by that you guys are going to know from the podcast if you've been watching all season long. So make sure you tune in. You drop us your questions Sunday, live on YouTube, Locked On Blue Jays. And we always appreciate you guys making us your first listen every day. Make sure you go check out Locked On MLB with host Paul Sullivan. Sully, he will be covering the entire league, sort of as an all-encompassing thing. Great storylines. He just runs a great show, so make sure you check that out and make him your second listen. Thanks again, guys. We are going to be right back with a ton more Blue Jays news. Well, not a ton more. It's pretty dead here, but we got a little bit more to go over here. Sort of something funny, Carter, that I needed to bring up to you, and we'll get right into that after this break. Today's episode brought to you by Booking.com. Explore those U.S. cities you've always secretly wanted to learn more about. Maybe it's time to taste test your baseball competitor's stadium cuisine. Luckily on Booking.com, you can find a stadium stay that's just right for you. With Booking.com's wide variety of choice across the U.S., you can go incognito to all your baseball rivals' cities. I talk about it all the time. We went to New York. We went to Minneapolis. A ton more places. And it even helped us out on the trip to Toronto that we went to. And Booking.com is the best place to do that, in my opinion. I absolutely love it. Helps us out a ton and makes the stays even better. Booking.com delivers the exact right U.S. stay for you. Booking.com and help you book a stay that's close to your home teams or rivals' stadium. Booking.com, booking.yeah. All right, Carter, last segment here. going into the final off day of the season. Wow, it's been an absolute ride here for Locked On Blue Jays. And we got a ton more coming. Off season, next season, we've got plans in the works to give you guys the best content we can, and that's what we strive to do. We're going to push ourselves and try to get more and more stuff out to you. Hopefully, we're going to try to bring back the TikToks, Reels, Shorts, into the off season. It's just been a little bit dead here. It's been a little bit tough.
Yeah, the Blue Jays kicked us in the mouth on that one. It was tough to make a game recap on a game that didn't necessarily matter anyway. I'm sure a lot of you guys would have had the same stance as well. We've been watching actually a surprising amount of Toronto Blue Jays games going into this podcast. I'm glad that we have been watching the games, but has it been rough. Sure that I know a lot of our friends that are huge Blue Jays fans have not cared about this team for a while. We obviously appreciate you guys sticking around. Again, these games do mean something, but for the grand scheme of things, they really don't in a sense. So this has been a little bit of a dead episode. But again, for the offseason, we have so much planned. We're going to do recaps. We're going to do what went wrong for the Toronto Blue Jays season, which was a lot, obviously. We have so much more planned for the offseason. So we're just, we're kind of at this point, we're just getting excited. Is also a little bit disappointed for the end of the Toronto Blue Jays season, but we definitely are excited to snap it around on the live on Sunday, whether it's baseball talk, whether it's just about life, whether it's about football. Definitely love to talk about football, whether it's about your favorite beer, and I don't care, favorite food, whatever it is. We'll definitely be snapping around on that podcast. But I have two more things to talk about. One of them is just kind of ridiculous, but I actually think based off what you said, it might be the same thing. But I do want to cover Bichette, and this is the more serious note. Bichette, obviously, this season didn't necessarily go exactly the way that he wanted to. Tried to come back and then got injured fielding ground balls. But the update on Bichette is that he had to get surgery, and he got surgery actually the day that we're recording this to put a pin in his right middle finger. The reports are that the fracture was a bit displaced, and that's from John Schneider. This should help the bone set. I'm not a doctor, but obviously they got this situation handled. It says that Bichette should be ready to go for the 2025 spring training. I mean, I'd hope so. Like, you got 5 months to recover from a fractured finger. Hopefully it wouldn't take that long. But just hopefully, you just got to hope and pray for the speedy recovery of Bichette and just better things for Bichette in 2025.
Yeah, this sucks. I mean, this was our huge thing. Don't bring Bichette back. Let him end the season so he's not hurt going into next year. And what happens is he gets through his first game. Going into the second game, he then gets injured. So I don't know. I don't know what people are thinking sometimes, Carter. And that's why when we brought up the whole Chris Bassitt thing, I was a little bit worried. But at the end of the day, they did what they did. He'll be fine. It's a finger. I mean, it's not the end of the world here. But, hopefully he recovers fast and recovers well. And that can be it for, the finger issues with Bichette. Carter, I do have something to tell you. Congratulations, Toronto Blue Jays fans. You have broken the record for the most hot dogs, loony dogs eaten this season at a staggering 727,819 loony dogs. Carter, that makes me sick to my stomach. That's disgusting. This fan base is gross, dude.
That's hilarious. I love it. Hey, I mean, I think Rogers is obviously making money on those loony dogs, but hey, you're not going to find loony dogs anywhere else. At least make those profit margins. You're going to go to the Toronto Blue Jays games anyway. Like, just buy the hot dogs. Don't spend money on anything else. You might feel horrendous after the game, but hey, who says that the Locked On Blue Jays aren't going to go out to Toronto next season on a Tuesday and maybe try to beat the record of loony dogs eaten in one Jays game? I know you've had your eye on that record for a while. It's exactly what I was going to bring up. Congratulations to Toronto Blue Jays, just completely getting better. We're setting good records, at least for the fans here, with doing our part and eating hot dogs, I guess. It's a little bit unfortunate with the direction this team has went. I'm actually surprised with how it has went, that we still beat the record with all the people showing up to these games. Speaking of attendance, in this last game against the Red Sox, the stadium was almost sold out. How does that happen? How does a ballpark almost get sold out in the fourth last game of the season? They're on a 5-game losing streak and a million games under 500. That just shows how loyal the fans are, or maybe just how much they like hot dogs. Not sure which one it is, but I guess that's for the people to decide.
Yeah, dude. You know what? It does. It blows my mind how great of a fan base they have, and
it's getting taken advantage of by Rogers every single day.
We are.
It's crazy.
We're on here doing a podcast. We're doing a Blue Jays podcast, talking about people getting taken advantage of. Here we are. We're spending every night here sitting in our rooms recording a podcast, but a team under 500. Jesus.
Talking about a team that just has not played competitive baseball in what feels like an eternity. Maybe we're taking the biggest L's from Rogers, unfortunately. Maybe all the podcast goers are taking L's. The fans definitely aren't taking L's. Maybe we are kind of taking L's as well. I can't say that entirely, but hey, the people are making it worth it. At least the Blue Jays aren't necessarily at all, but the people that are watching, the people that we get to talk to about Toronto Blue Jays baseball with, and just try to conceive some sort of notion of hope for the future with, definitely have a special place in my heart. But that's all I got. This is probably going to be the last episode that we're kind of like scrounging for things to talk about. We got a plan for Friday. We're going to have 3 games to talk about on Monday, obviously the end of the season. And then the off season, we got a bunch of stuff planned. We probably have a whole month and a half planned already at this point. So you guys hopefully can get excited for that. So we'll try to make it more exciting, more just easier to talk about Blue Jay stuff that's I'm not going to make you want to just bang your head on a wall when you talk about the Toronto Blue Jays. And that's kind of where I'm going to leave it. Thank you guys for watching. It's been a grind this season. We're 3 more games left. We appreciate all of you guys coming back every single day, or even if you just tuned in for one episode, just all the support in any sort of facet is always appreciated. Braden, you got anything else to add before we do head out into the off day?
No, not really much, Carter. I mean, the last thing that I have is make sure you guys tune into the live on Sunday. There's no better place to watch the final Blue Jays game than with the Locked On Blue Jays podcast. We're going to be watching together. You guys can drop your comments, your questions about whatever. A lot of special guests coming in that obviously you guys have seen before on this podcast. They're 2 great guys going to try to pop on as well. So drop your comments, drop your questions when we get going live. It'll be right from the first pitch. Always appreciate you guys watching, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.